Tavern Keeper's History of the Old World. Skeggy, a decade earlier. Anyway, Strolvar, are you going to tell me about the death of this Emperor Dragon of yours, then? The death of this Skaladrak Incarnadine?
Aye, I think it's time. Once it. After the dragon's disappearance following its fight with King Baragor, the beast went missing for the next 2 millennia or so. There is not a single mention of it in the Book of Grudges of Karak Kadrin, the Record of Kings, or the Book of Days. The dragon simply disappeared. That was until over 130 years ago, in the year 1420 of your imperial calendar. Although it was the year 4420 of our far older Dowie calendar.
Oh, you've not mentioned this calendar before. So with what event did this, Dowie?
It means dwarf, manling.
I see, of course. Anyway. Well, with what event did your Dowie calendar begin? Obviously, our imperial calendar starts with the founding of the Empire.
Aye, that is known to me. Our calendar begins with the founding of Karak as the capital of the Kala's Anchor. Not much else to be said there. Once it. Back to Skaladrak. It began as it always did. Some of the smaller caravans that regularly made their way through Peak Pass failed to arrive. It happens from time to time. Danger lurks everywhere, you see. This didn't raise too many eyebrows to begin with, but little by little, as the years turned into decades, and the numbers of mysterious disappearances increased and increased, more and more dwarves began to pay attention to the situation. The most revealing signs occurred about 50 years after this. Some of the dwarf patrols that guard the most used routes and man the numerous garrisons along the pass too disappeared. There are few foes that can do that. Alarm bells immediately rang in the heads of many. In response, some of our slayers went out, up and down the mountain to investigate, and soon found evidence that these disappearances were as a result of a dragon.
Oh, really? What sort of evidence?
Are you joking? That's it. The usual signs. Wrecked caravans, the remains of their occupants strewn about like leaf litter. The burnt and blackened bodies of dwarves in melted armor found within circles of singed grass. And, of course, the most obvious of all, gigantic dragon footprints in the snow near the bodies. Now do you have any more stupid questions, manling? Or can I get on with it?
Of course, Strolva. Please, get on with it.
Lancet. The Dragon Slayers brought their news back to the hold, and the clerics of Grimnir consulted the Book of Grudges of Karak Kadrin. Everything they heard from the Slayers seemed to point to one chilling conclusion. For there was but one dragon powerful enough to have perpetrated all of the attacks with the severity with which they were committed. Skaladrak Incarnadine, the bane of Baragor, had returned. After this, things soon escalated. The meager portions provided by feasting on the corpses of traveling traders and dwarf patrols was now in no way enough. The dragon had developed a taste for dwarf flesh, and as Skaladrak had aged and grown, so had his appetite. At that time, unknown to many, but there, nonetheless, was an ancient mining shaft high up in the mountain of Karak Kadrin. Far too high up to be seen easily, even more difficult to reach, and all but inaccessible of any army to use as an ingress. But not so inaccessible that Skaladrak didn't find and enter by it.
But Strolva, surely it was guarded.
Indeed it was. Lightly, though. Light enough, in fact, that it may as well have not been guarded at all. The few guards that were there did nothing more than provide Skaladrak with some fine dwarf meat to feast on before he entered the shaft. The shaft led down to a series of dark caverns that led directly to the hold. These were more heavily guarded, though, and once the dragon was spotted and engaged, he felt the wrath of the kin of Karak Kadrin. It's him! It's the bane of Baragor! The dragon has come to the hold! There's the alarm! And so, the warriors, miners, and slayers of Karak Kadrin came a-running, their blades eager to spill the dragon's foul blood. The fighting and the caves was fierce. Kadrin's steel struck dragon scale. Talon, tooth, and claw tore down far too many dwarves, and doom was sought and found by slayer after slayer. But all this death was not in vain, for Skaladrak was driven off. Once more, dwarven axes grievously wounding the beast, and in its fury it laid down a wall of flames to cover its escape, burning many brave warriors in their armor before snaking its way back up the shaft through which it had come. The butcher's bill high, but worth it to preserve the hold. With the defeat of the dragon, the dwarves of Karak Kadrin assembled in the king's hall, and the king himself, another Ungrim, for he was a direct descendant of King Baragor, addressed the throng.
Brothers and sisters, shall we allow this vile yet audacious enemy to violate with impunity the sacred ground of Karak Kadrin? Will you permit the bane of Baragor, killer of Dowie beyond easy count, to escape the retribution of our sharp blades, and continue to carry terror into the hearts of our families? You will not! March, my brothers. March to meet he that has so sorely brought shame and pain to Peak Pass and a curse upon my ancestors. Tear from his horned head the teeth that have been stained with Dowie blood, and rip from his limbs the talons that have wrought destruction on our minds and our homes. Teach the world that a malediction attends those that violate the eternal realms of Kalazankar. The result of our efforts will be unclouded glory, a durable peace, prosperity, and vengeance.
Next came the fury. With these words the king mustered and then led a massive army of slayers and dwarves who marched out of the hold a mere 2 days later. My own father amongst them. Before you ask, I was still young and forbidden from joining the muster. Ahead of this army, dragon slayers had tracked the wounded dragon. The fight with Skaladrak in the mine had left it bloody, beaten, weakened, and most importantly, unable to fly. These slayers followed Skaladrak back to his lair and then guided the army to strike the final blow. At last, vengeance for Balagor was at hand when something wholly unforeseen happened.
What? What happened, Strolvar?
Ratman!
Skaven? What the